All right, students. So today our lesson is going to be plate sculptures, DIY clay at home. Our objectives or our I can statements are: I can create clay using household products. I can create a plate with a flower design. I can use materials, tools, and equipment proficiently. Our guiding questions are: what is a sculpture? Are all sculptures made the same or out of the same material? And where might you see a sculpture in real life? So let's start with what is a sculpture? The art of making 2- or 3-dimensional representative or abstract forms, especially by carving stone or wood or by casting metal or plaster. So if you look at the 3 images below, I have a wood carving of a hand. In the middle, there is a stone carving of a woman, and on the far right, there is a metal sculpture of a lion. This also takes us back to our second question of: are all sculptures made the same or out of the same materials? So no, all sculptures are not made the same, because we can see the wood sculpture is very smooth, whereas the metal sculpture is kind of rough and edgy and more abstract. So where might you see sculpture? You can see sculpture at a park, or maybe in a house, or even sand sculptures at the beach. So I need you to watch this cool video for a moment.
It's a sculpture of me. Can't you tell? It's a work in progress, okay? Dear Tim and Moby, what's the big deal about sculpture? Thanks, Boffo. Sculpture is a kind of 3-dimensional artwork made by shaping different materials into shapes and figures. And right there is why it's such a big deal. Sculptors take random blobs of material and shape them into meaningful and often beautiful forms. Moving on, sculpture is one of the oldest art forms, going all the way back to prehistoric times. Even though the techniques have changed drastically since then, it's easy to see the goals of sculpture have pretty much stayed the same: to portray the qualities of life in non-living stuff. That's why animal and human forms are by far the most popular subjects. For thousands of years, sculptors have focused on capturing life's movement and softness in hard, motionless materials. Even abstract sculptures often include the curves of living things. Well, sculptors can use a lot of different materials: stone, metal, wood, clay, wax, plaster, ice, anything solid enough to be shaped. I'm working with marble, a kind of stone that's a popular choice for making a statue. Statues are a common type of sculpture that represent a person, animal, or event. During the Renaissance, the Italian artist Michelangelo used marble to create his famous masterpiece, the statue of David. See how lifelike it is? You'd think it'd feel like warm human skin instead of cold, hard marble. A successful sculpture can make you want to touch it, but that's usually not such a good idea in a museum. Anyway, picking the material is only the first step. Sculptors also have a lot of different sculpting techniques to choose from. There's carving, where chunks of hard material like stone or wood are reduced to recognizable shapes and figures. Using tools like a rasp, a hammer, and a chisel, they grind, pound, and chip away all the unwanted parts to slowly reveal the masterpiece within. Then there's modeling, which uses materials that are soft enough to be shaped by hand, like clay or wax. Sometimes, sculptors add pieces of this stuff on top of an armature, a wire frame that supports the finished sculpture, sort of like a skeleton. A clay sculpture is usually fired in a kiln, a type of oven that hardens clay by baking it. Ta-da! What's that? You like this sculpture so much that you wish we could make more just like it? Well, good thing we have a third sculpting technique called casting. First, we create a negative image of the original sculpture called a mold. Crack open the mold and we're left with two pieces that form an empty space the exact same size and shape as our sculpture. All we have to do, more or less, is put the pieces back together and pour more liquid, plaster works for this part too, into the empty space. Once that dries and hardens, we'll have ourselves a perfect copy of the original. These are all pretty traditional methods of making sculpture, but artists use all sorts of techniques to make three-dimensional works of art. For instance, they can weld pieces of metal, sew fabrics, or even use manufacturing or construction tools to shape their work. Right, not all sculptures are freestanding or in the round. Relief sculptures project out from flat backgrounds like walls or even mountains. Well, just like any other art form, sculptures can serve different purposes. It can commemorate important leaders and historic events. It can be used to express religious themes. It can make a political or cultural statement. It can even just be pretty to look at. Oh, cool, you made a bust of yourself. No, a bust. A statue that shows a person from the chest up? Never mind.
So, on to how to make the clay. The materials that you will need is 1 cup of flour, a half a cup of salt, a half to 3/4 cup of water, 1 tablespoon of cooking oil. Any kind will do, just use whatever you have, but vegetable oil generally works best for some reason. 1 spoon to mix with, a large mixing bowl, and 1 baking tray, and food coloring if you want to add color to it. These are the directions. I'm not going to read all of these because I'm going to actually have a video to demonstrate how to do all of this. If you need to go back for references, the directions are here. Please make sure that you have adult supervision. So now that you have all your materials, let's begin. All right, so we're gonna start. Make sure that you have all the materials that you need. You need some oil. I'm just using regular olive oil because that's all that I have. You need regular flour, some salt. You also need measuring cups for 1 cup and a half a cup. If you don't have measuring cups, you can always just use like a regular small glass or small cup. It's pretty much the same as this. And I have my tablespoon measuring. If you don't have a tablespoon measuring like this to measure your oil, just get a big regular eating spoon. It works just the same. And make sure you have a nice mixing bowl or a big enough bowl to mix this in. All right, and a clean area to work in. First, I'm gonna take 1 cup of flour. So I get my flour, scoop out 1 cup, or close to 1 cup. It doesn't have to be perfect as long as it's about a cup. And I'm just gonna dump that in. Make sure it's all out. And then I'm going to get my half a cup and I'm going to pour my salt in. So I just want to pour my salt to it's like half a cup of salt. Okay, once you have a half a cup of salt, you're just gonna dump that in with your flour. And what I like to do, because I'm a really hands-on person, is I just like to kind of mix it up with my hands. You can mix it up with a spoon if you want to. I'm just going to mix it up with my hands. Because guess what? Your hands are going to get dirty anyway. All right. Ooh. After you mix that up, you need your oil. You need about a tablespoon of oil. So I'm just going to pour my tablespoon. Okay. Set that over there. And you're just going to like dump that right in there. And set that to the side because guess what? You don't need it anymore. And now I need some water. So I'm still using like the half a cup measuring. You can use the, actually, you know what? The cup will probably work better. So I'm going to get some water really quick. Okay, so I got my cup of water and it's almost full, as you can see. And what I'm going to do next is I am going to get my spoon and I'm going to slowly pour the water in because you want to kind of like pour it in and mix at the same time because you want it to turn into a doughy consistency, kind of like Play-Doh. So I pour a little water, and as I do this, I'm just going to start mixing. Okay, it still looks way too lumpy, so I'm going to add some more water. And then I'm going to continue to stir, making sure that everything kind of gets mixed up. And we're going to keep repeating this process. I hope you are working along with me right now. Because you really do not want to add an entire cup of water to this. That's way too much water. It's not going to come out right. Okay. So I'm still mixing. Mine's still a little dry in areas, and we don't want any dryness. So just add a little bit more, and I'm slowly stirring it to mix it up. Okay, I think that's about right now. And it does get a little hard, so if you need your parents to help you stir, get your parents' help. This is a fun family activity, actually. So continue to stir until it's kind of all mixed up and you have like this doughy consistency, and you can feel it now. Now at this point you want to feel it because you want to make sure it's still kind of sticking together. And at this point I would say have your parent or guardian turn the oven on to a low setting. I'm going to preheat my oven to 250, which is a really low setting. And then the fun part begins. So now this is what we're going to use to actually make our plate. And when I say plate, I'm not talking about a dinner plate. Okay? So first, you want to kind of wipe it off. Get rid of your spoon because now it's all hands-on. Again, like I said, you need that nice smooth surface area. If your parents don't want you to make a mess on their countertop, what you can do is you can get some paper towels because it's not going to stick to the paper towels. Or you can get like some aluminum foil or something. I'm just going to use a paper towel because it's the closest thing that I have. Again, we're only using at-home materials. And then I'm going to take my dough out. And yeah, it's sticky, it's messy. This is art. We're usually messy anyway. So now I have my dough. Okay, and I'm going to kind of roll it into a ball. Kind of drop it on my paper towel right now. All right. Now, if you want to, you could let it rest for a little while so that it gets a more of a thicker consistency. And if you do that, I would say let it rest for about 10 minutes. And I think that's actually what I'm going to do because it's just really sticky right now. And you can just leave it where it is. So I'll say just leave it on your paper towel, or you can leave it in your bowl, whichever is fine for you, and let that rest for about 10 minutes, and then we will be back. All right, so I do have a few more minutes to let this rest, probably about 3 minutes, but I wanted to show you what an exemplar would look like. So I do have a finished product right here. I made a flower, which is what we're going to be making because it's springtime. You don't necessarily have to make a flower. You can make a butterfly, a flower, a heart, or you can just do a handprint if that's what you want to do. But this is what I mean by a plate. So the bottom part, that's the plate, and you build on top of the plate with your design. For the next part, you will still need a little bit of water. So I'm just going to use the water that I have left over. Oh, and that's the beeping from my oven because it says it's ready, because you want to put this, after you make this, into a preheated oven, not an oven that's getting warm, but you need an oven that's already hot. If you want to, what you could also do is if you want this to have color, at this point, you can add food coloring to your dough and mix it in, and so it'll have like swirls and things. Or you can wait until afterwards, after you've baked it and it's gotten hard, because it's very hard. It's hot. It is solid. After you've baked it, then you can paint it if you want to paint it, or if you have markers, you can use markers to decorate it, or you can use crayons or glue and glitter. It's really whatever strikes your fancy when it comes to designing this. So I just let mine set for 5 minutes, and now I'm gonna take it, and now it's not as gooey and sticky as it was at first, because that was very problematic. I kind of shape it into a ball, and what I want to do is, this is what I realized when I did my first one. The thinner you make it, the quicker it takes for it to get hard. Mine is fairly thick, so I'm going to try to make this one a little bit thinner. So what you want to do is you want to pull off about a little bit under a half of it off. So I'm going to put that over there. And you want to use the smaller part. So I have a big part, I have a large part, and I have a small part. I'm going to use the small part to make the bottom part, to make the plate part. And all it really is, there are tons of ways you could do it. I just kind of throw it down, and I'm going to push it down with my hands. And yeah, it will kind of stick to you. That's why I suggest using like a paper towel or aluminum foil or wax paper or parchment paper, just something that it won't really stick to. And you can shape it. Your plate can be whatever shape you want it to be. If you want it to be a square, it can be a square. If you want it to be a circle, it can be a circle. I'm just trying to make mine as thin as I possibly can and as big as I can, because the bigger you make it, guess what? The bigger it's going to be. The more space you have to actually build up your plate. So now I think I have it about, the size that I want it to be. I'm kind of sit this over here to the side. I don't really care about my countertops. And I lift it off the paper just so I can make sure that it's the way I want it to be. And it's still kind of sticking. I think mine is a little bit too thin, so I'm just gonna restart. And it's okay. These things happen. This stuff right here is not air dry, so it's not going to just dry up on you. You can mess with this all day long until you put it in the oven. But once you put it in the oven, that's it. If it sticks to your hand like it's sticking to my hand right now, what I would suggest is one of two things. Either you can get some more flour, and you can put some flour on your hand, which is what I'm about to do. Rub the flour on your hand. That way, it won't stick to your hand anymore. because it's really starting to bother me. All right, so I'm just gonna do that, flatten it out. Like I said, if you want to get fancy and make different shapes with your plate, you can. Like this one right here is probably going to turn into a heart. The base of your plate can look however you want it to look. After you have your shape, kind of pat it down. Okay. Also, you can hang these, and if you want to hang it, I would suggest putting a hole in it after you've built up your plate. So now that I have my base, I'm gonna push that part down just a little bit more, just so it looks more like a heart. Okay. Again, yours can be round, square, whatever shape you want to make it into. It's stuck to my countertop. Next, you're going to start taking out small pieces. So I am going to make another flower. And the way I start with my flowers is I take a small piece of dough. Okay, and then I'm just going to roll that into a little ball. Take my ball and I'm going to stick it. This is like the center part of the flower where the seeds normally are. And I'm going to push it down into my plate. And I'm going to be really gentle because I do want it to stand up like a lump. Okay. Another thing you can do is, remember I told you I still have some extra water left. I'm going to take like one finger and kind of just rub around it. And what that does is the water helps it to stick to the plate better. Okay. Okay. You can shape it how you want it. Okay. Now I have my first shape. It just looks like a lump. Then I'm going to peel off another smaller piece. And you will probably have a lot of extra dough left if you want to make something else. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to roll that into a ball. I'm going to take my thumb this time and I am going to press into it. I have like a thumb indent. Okay, so if it sticks to your thumb, what that means is, number one, you may need to put some water or some flour on your thumb. So I'm gonna go back with my flour, rub it on my thumb, roll that back into a ball. We're gonna do it again. Take my thumb and I am going to push in there. That way it didn't stick that time. But it stuck to the back of my hand. I'm having all kinds of issues today. Some flour all over my hands again. Alright, so now I have flour all over my hands again. For the third time. Third time's the charm, right kids? Alright, so we're going to push down. And we're going to lay it on the plate and do the same thing, kind of blend it in to the bottom of it. And we are going to repeat this process several times until we have petals going all the way around. So roll it into a ball, take your thumb, press it down, and you're going to stick it right next to the first petal and you do the same thing, press down so that it blends into it. We'll continue this process. I may actually do 2 flowers on this one since I made it into a heart shaped. And your petals don't have to be perfect because they're just flower petals. They don't all have to look the same, but the thumb impression is really the easiest way to do it. Go, roll, press with your thumb, lay next. And you're just going around in a circle. When it starts to get sticky again, just get some more flour. Roll into a ball, press with your thumb, and continue. So I want you to continue doing this until you have made your entire plate. Yeah, I'm going to make another flower on mine. Make a smaller flower. Remember, adding a little bit of water helps it stick to the plate better. And if you're making a smaller flower, I would not suggest using your thumb to make the petals. Instead, I would suggest using a smaller finger. I'm going to use my pinky finger, but you still do the same thing. And you just continue around until you've made your flower. So we're going to continue to work on this until you have finished putting all the petals on your flower. And everything doesn't have to sit perfectly on your plate. If some things hang over the edge of it, that's fine too. Okay, I think this is going to be my last petal. It didn't come out the way I wanted it to, but hey, that's okay. It's on there. Use a little water to rub that in. All right. Now, so I have 2 flowers on here. And if you want to, you can add a vine or something, a stem, or you can just make other decorations. I'm going to add maybe like a connecting stem or something that kind of goes around it. So I'm going to take a little bit of dough again. Okay, not a lot, just a little. And I'm going to roll it kind of like I'm rolling a snake. We all know how to do this. And then I'm going to say that's 1. And I'm going to connect it to there. And this will be my second one. And mine are going to kind of crisscross overlap. You can do yours however you want yours to be. If you want to add leaves to it, you can add leaves. It's really up to you. And again, I'm just taking some water and dabbing on there so that it's all going to blend in nicely together. But you don't want to push it down too hard or else it'll just get flat. And we don't want these to look flat. So again, just adding a little water so that everything sticks to the plate together. Alright, now here's the fun part. Like I said, you're probably going to have a lot of dough left over, so if you want to make something else later, feel free to. But at this point, if you have things like maybe a fork or a butter knife or something like that, I'm going to go with a fork and a butter knife. You can make different designs on your flowers as well. So I'm going to move this to the side. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you 2 ways. You can take your fork Okay, and then you can take the pointy part and just kind of push into your flower to give it some cool design effects. So I'm just pushing into my petal to put like those little veins that are on the flowers. Or you can use it to poke holes for the center part if you want to. Just to give it a little bit of texture. Or you can do the same thing with a butter knife, which is kind of like make the lines. I'm just going to make one little line in each one, just so that my flowers look a little bit different. I don't want them to look too much the same. And I'm just going to kind of add some lines on my stems. Alright, if you want to, like my first one, I decided to add like some extra decorative elements, like these little circles around. You can do the same thing. All I did was I took a little of the dough, like literally a very tiny piece, and I just rolled it in my fingers into a little ball, and I stuck it on there. If you want to get really fancy, you could do your initials or whatever you want to. But I think I'm going to just leave this one as a simple plate. And now your oven should be nice and hot, and you're going to take this, you're going to place it on a baking tray. So the easiest way to get it off of the paper or whatever it is that you had it on is to lift it, put my plate up under there, well, my baking tray up under there, and you're going to flip it over in your hand, pull the paper off the back, and then flip it over and put it on the tray. Once it's on the tray, just kind of trying to get some of this flour and dust off of it. Once it's on the tray, you're going to put it in the oven. Don't put it on the very bottom, put it around the middle. And you're going to put it in the oven for about an hour. Literally, it's going to take about an hour to get everything done. After an hour, you're going to take it out of the oven. If it still feels a little doughy, at this point, please, please, please have your parents check on this. I don't want you burning yourselves or burning the house down. So please have your parents check on it after an hour. If it still feels doughy to them, they can leave it in there for about 15 more minutes, or they can turn the temperature up and it'll get harder faster. Either way, once you take it out of the oven, you are going to let it rest and get hard, because once it comes out, it's still going to feel a little soft, but once it rests, like, it gets really, really hard. Okay, so I hope you have fun with this lesson. Once it gets hard, you can color it, or you can just leave it the way it is. And now you know how to make do-it-yourself clay at home. Thanks. Hope you enjoyed the lesson. So let's review what we learned. We learned that a sculpture is a 2- or 3-dimensional representation of an abstract form, generally made from a carving or mold. We also learned that sculptures can be found in a number of different places. Some examples that we talked about are parks, houses, or beaches, but they can also be found in so many other places. They can be found just outside. They can be found at malls. They can be found at zoos. Pretty much any place can house a sculpture. We also learned that they can be made out of a number of different materials: wood, plaster, metal, cotton, plastic, and clay, like we use today. I do hope that you enjoyed your lesson and that you are staying safe. See you soon.